Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I please introduce Honorable James Maridadi, Member of Parliament, Zimbabwe Parliament. He's here to give a keynote speech on the current events in Zimbabwe, following the events that just took place in Zimbabwe in the last few weeks. Honorable Maridadi.
Thank you. Hello to everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to have what I would want to call a conversations with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora pertaining to what is happening in the country. I think we realize that events have been coming thick and fast in the past 2 to 3 weeks. It started with ZANU-PF rallies, where the wife of the president said a lot of things that were of concern to all of us as Zimbabweans. And then following hard on those rallies, which were dubbed youth interface rallies, the vice president of the country was then dismissed, and he ran away to come here to South Africa, and after that we saw one to 2 weeks later there was a military intervention, and the military took over. The vice president came back and took over as president of the country, and that followed other events in the intervening period, like the impeachment drive of the sitting president, which led to his resignation, and then the inauguration of the new president, the announcement of a new cabinet, and so on. So those are some of the things that I think we want to have a conversation around and say, what does it mean for all of us? What does military intervention mean for all of us? Mugabe has been president of that country for the past 37 years. So obviously, his departure has an impact on all of us. And someone might wonder why I belong to the MDCT party. It is the party that sponsored me to get into parliament. Then somebody wonders why I'm going to spend so much time talking about ZANU-PF. I spend so much time talking about ZANU-PF and not any other political party in Zimbabwe, for the simple reason that ZANU-PF is the governing party. So what happens in ZANU-PF has an impact on all of us. ZANU-PF policies, the ZANU-PF manifesto is what informs government policy, because in politics it is the party which comes before the government. So it is the party, then the government. And so if you look at the MDC has its manifesto. If MDC takes over power, the MDC manifesto will inform government policy. And government policy is what affects all of us, the way government is run. So I want to start by unpacking the military intervention. But as I get into my discussion, I think what we need to understand is that I did not come here to condemn anybody. I'm not here to condemn the government. I'm not here to condemn the opposition. I'm here to simply state the facts as they are. Let me go to the military intervention and say, what does the military intervention mean in Zimbabwe, and what does it mean for all of us? And in doing so, I want to make reference to the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear on a lot of things. And what makes me so happy is that for the first time, ever since the country was established as a country in 1924, people have realized the importance, one, of the institution of parliament, and secondly, the importance of a document called the Constitution. I'll go to section 214, 213, 214 of the Constitution and say, what does a military intervention mean in any country, more so in Zimbabwe? Section 212 of the Constitution is very clear. Function of the defense forces. The function of the defense forces is to protect Zimbabwe, its people, its national security and interests and its territorial integrity, and to uphold this constitution. That is the main function of the defense forces. And then let me talk about the deployment of the defense forces. Subject to this constitution, only the president is commander-in-chief of the defense forces. So when a president is a commander-in-chief of the defense forces, that power is derived from the constitution. So when we say a president and commander-in-chief of the defense forces, it's derived from the constitution. Only the president, as commander-in-chief of the defense forces, has power to authorize the deployment of defense forces, or has power to determine the operational use of the defense forces. With the authority of the president, the defense forces may deploy in Zimbabwe, in defense of Zimbabwe, in support of police service, in the maintenance of public order, and in support of the police service and other civilian authorities in the event of an emergency or disaster. So the army does not deploy in the first instance in a country. They must deploy in support of the police. The police will deploy, and when the police is overwhelmed, that is when the army can deploy. But the army can only deploy with the express authority of the president. No one else has the authority to deploy the army. That person must have the title of president and commander-in-chief of the defense forces. So that is very clear. Then section 3 of 213 of the Constitution says, with the authority of the president, the defense forces may be deployed outside of Zimbabwe. I'm not going to get into this because it is not of our concern now, how the defense forces is deployed and the role that Parliament plays in the deployment of the defense forces and so forth. Then political accountability. Section 214 talks about political accountability for deployment of defense forces. Because the section 213 talks about deployment of defense forces, and 214 talks about political accountability of deployment of the defense forces. When the defense forces are deployed in Zimbabwe to assist in the maintenance of public order or outside of Zimbabwe, the president must cause Parliament to be informed promptly and in appropriate detail of the reasons for their deployment. And where they are deployed in Zimbabwe, the place where they are deployed, right? Where they are deployed outside Zimbabwe, I'm not going to talk about that. So the defense forces can only be deployed with the authority of the commander-in-chief, and the commander-in-chief of the defense forces is the president. The reason why the defense forces did not want to call it a coup is because the consequences of a coup are known to everybody. There's a precedent in the SADC region where there was a coup in Lesotho, and the South African government moved in, South African defense forces moved in and crashed the coup two times. I think 2 times in the past 3 or 4 years. So the consequences of a coup are known to everybody. And in any case, the days of coups are long gone. No one can stage a coup successfully because the days of coups are long gone. So there we are. The defense forces were deployed. And in their initial statement after deployment, it was said, Parliament, we respect you, and Parliament, you're going to be allowed to continue with your duties as an arm of the state. Because it was known that sooner or later the country had to go back to constitutionality. And the country could not go back to constitutionality without the institution of Parliament. Only the institution of Parliament could take the country back to constitutionality after the deployment of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. That is why Robert Mugabe was allowed to go and preside over a graduation ceremony. It was because they didn't want it to be called a coup. Because stopping Robert Mugabe from presiding over a graduation ceremony that had been organized in advance would have resulted in him being under house arrest, and it would have made it a coup. Now, after the deployment of the defense forces, Zimbabweans marched on the Saturday. And people wonder why Zimbabweans marched. I think when people marched on that Saturday, it was an expression of happiness. This is what Zimbabweans have been longing to do for the past 37 years. And that chance to march freely without police interference has been denied the children of Zimbabwe for the past 37 years by Robert Mugabe. So when Zimbabwe marched, they were not marching for anybody. Zimbabweans were marching for themselves, expressing the joy that they had bottled in the past 37 years. What is particularly instructive is that the march, it was a march made up of more than 500,000 people, but there was not a single incident of people that fought. There was not a single incident of looting. There was not a single incident of fighting. There was not a single incident of injury. It means Zimbabweans were determined to just march and express their happiness that they, for once they are allowed to march without police interference. And yet, as people that always march in Harare, we are told, no, you cannot march because there's not enough police to provide security. Zimbabweans marched without a single police officer being deployed, and they marched peacefully. What it means is that when the police are deployed to protect marchers and there's violence, it is actually the police that would have provoked violence. It means Zimbabweans are capable of marching without being violent. When you become a president without going through an election, you need to be legitimate. And I think that is the biggest challenge that the Zimbabwean government has at the moment. Because there's a president who has come in using other means which are not an election. Because the constitution is very clear on how a president is elected. The constitution is very clear. And in the event that you can come in without an election, if you're taking over from a president who was representing your party, if you look at Section 97, in the event of incapacitation of a president, the vice president, the last, or in Zimbabwe we have two vice presidents, the last president to act takes over for 30 days and becomes a president for 30 days, for 90 days, after which they must then call for an election. And that did not happen. This is one of the ways in which a president can come in, or he can come in after an election. But this did not happen. So what it means is that there is a need for this government to be legitimate. Section 97 of the Constitution is clear on the removal of a president. And it is a section with just a few lines on the removal of a president. And my personal belief is that President Mugabe resigned because he was told that the impeachment process was underway. He realized the process of impeaching him was underway, and it could not be stopped. And because of that, President Mugabe resigned. But the impeachment process would have been a very long process, because after moving the motion, debating it, then half of the people must vote. Half of both there was a joint sitting of both houses, the Senate and the House of Assembly. They must sit and then vote. And if half of their numbers say, look, we must go ahead, then the Committee on Standing Rules and Orders must then be constituted, and they must come up with a committee of 9 people that will investigate the sitting president. So that those 9 people are constituted, and they must reflect the representation of political parties in parliament. Those 9 people will do the investigations, and they will provide, then they will make available the allegations to the president, their findings, and the president must be able to defend himself. And that's when 2/3 of the joint sitting must vote. If 2/3 decide, look, we think the president must go, then the president must go. That process can take a few days, and it can take several weeks, but we didn't get to that. The moment that we started debating the impeachment, it was the impeachment was read out. I debated it. Honorable Mandipaka debated it. Honorable Senator Chipanga debated it. Honorable Jesima Jome debated it. And when it was time for, I think, this 5th person to debate, Honorable Msara Mshonga, that is when the resignation of Robert Mugabe came. and so the whole issue of impeachment then fell away. So now we are in a situation where we have a government that is calling for an election in the next 7 months. Now the question is, when you go into an election in the next 7 months, is the election, because what makes a government legitimate is a free, fair, and credible election that cannot be contested. What it means is that we must get into an election and vote. And after the election, everyone who has participated in that election must satisfy themselves that the election was free, and it was fair, and it was credible, and no one is going to contest the outcome of that election. So that is the problem that we are now grappling with. We need electoral reforms in Zimbabwe. We need electoral reforms as soon as possible. And when we talk of electoral reforms in Zimbabwe, I think this is a song that the opposition has been singing ever since the opposition came into being in 1999. That we need electoral reforms which will lead to credible elections, and so on. So, what is of paramount importance is I know the question that people in the diaspora want to ask is, are we going to vote in this election? The question that everyone in the diaspora is going to ask is, are we going to vote in this election? We have Zimbabwe has more than 3 million people in the diaspora, and most of those people who are in the diaspora are mostly South Africa. You'll be surprised with the number of Zimbabweans that you meet on the streets of South Africa. In Cape Town, in Durban, wherever you go, you meet Zimbabweans on the street. And most of those people did not come here because they wanted to come here. Most of those people came here because maybe they were running away. Basically, people that came to South Africa from Zimbabwe came here as refugees, but some of them actually jumped the border. They don't even have documents. So people in the diaspora would like to vote. And the government, in presenting the budget, the Minister of Finance in the past 4 or 5 years talks about diaspora remittances. Diaspora remittances constitute a very big chunk of Zimbabwe's revenue base. Quite a big chunk. It comprises diaspora remittances. I think it must be the second biggest after taxes. And then the question that we've always asked is, why do you want the diaspora to remit their money into this country when you do not want them to vote? That is a question that we've always asked. We cannot go out to the diaspora, reach out to the diaspora and say, remit your money back home, and yet we say diasporans are not eligible to vote. Because when diasporans are voting, they're basically voting for their money that they're remitting to Zimbabwe. Because if you are voting for something, you want to remit your money to Zimbabwe and then be able to vote for an administration that you know will be able to account for your money properly. That is the whole essence of saying why should diasporans not be allowed to vote. So this is one matter that we assist with, that people in the diaspora should be allowed to vote. The other issue that I want to talk about is the issue of the economy of Zimbabwe. I think the economy of Zimbabwe is in a trough. It is at the bottom, and it can only go up. If you look at a country endowed with so much mineral resources like Zimbabwe, our budget is only about 3.7 billion. This time, the Minister of Finance said our budget will be slightly above 4 billion. But I know that budget is going to be revised downwards because of the revenue streams of the country. And what you must also realize is that most of that budget is the biggest, that portion of the budget which goes to health, the biggest chunk of the health budget comes from development partners. So the biggest problem that we have in Zimbabwe is one, huge debt overhang. Zimbabwe is a very huge debt. And if you look at that debt, as a percentage of GDP. It is not acceptable. It's too much on the high side. That's number one. Number two, Zimbabwe is endemic corruption. Nobody knows how much money was received by the country from the diamonds field. Nobody knows. We know Robert Mugabe spoke about 15 billion, and nobody up to now has come to explain what happened to the 15 billion. There is the issue of the rule of law. The issue of the rule of law, repressive laws. There are laws in Zimbabwe which are so archaic, they do not, they cannot be in the statute books of a modern democracy, like IPA, a Criminal Law Codification Act, Official Secrets Act, because the Constitution is very clear on freedom of expression and the freedom of access to information. The Constitution is very clear, and yet we have statutes which claw back into those constitutional provisions and take away people's liberties, especially take away people's right to express themselves and people's right to information. So when then we go to development partners, we go to the IMF, we go to the World Bank, we go to Europe, and we go to the United States to look for say, balance of payment support. Because without balance of payment support, Zimbabwe as a country, we are dead. Because we import more than we export. So our balance of payment support is in the negative. We need to be able to get money for the balance of payment support. And the best way to get balance of payment support is to get support from Bretton Woods institutions, to get support from Europe, and to get support from the United States. But the problem that we're having is that the United States will say, other developing agencies will say, fine, fair enough, we're able to give you money, but there are these things that you must do for us to be able to give you money. One of them is a free and fair election. One of them is freedom of the press. The other is that all political parties must have equal access to the media. You cannot have a media like ZBC operating like as if it is the ZANU-PF mouthpiece. ZANU-PF can have their own radio station and they can have their own television station, and it's in order. And on their television station, from 24 hours, from 12 to 12, 24 hours, they are able to talk about ZANU-PF, and they are able to say everything they want about their party. They are able to say all their slogans on that station. ZANU-PF have their paper called People's Voice. They can talk about anything they want about ZANU-PF in that newspaper, and no one will have a problem. But when it comes to ZBC, it must be such that when leader of political party A gets 5 minutes on main news, leader of political party B must be able to get 5 minutes. Leader of political party C must be able to get 5 minutes, and so on and so forth. And if it is the Herald cannot continue to act as a mouthpiece of ZANU-PF. And we all know what then happened to the Herald just before all this happened. The Herald was so captured that they were not even able to report on some issues that were of interest. I can give you as an example the issue of Grace Mugabe coming to South Africa and having an altercation with that young girl and so on. The Herald, not one day did they carry that story. It was a story which was headline news the world over. You tune to CNN, to ENCA, to SABC, to TV Botswana, to Zambia. It was headline news. The first lady of Zimbabwe, Grace Mugabe, assaulted a young girl in a hotel, in a flight in South Africa, in Joburg. And yet ZBC did not carry that story, not one day. The Herald did not carry that story, not one day. So that is what we must try to avoid. When you have a media which acts like political activists, then you have a problem, especially if it is a government media. Government journalists must be able to work like journalists. Government journalists the press in Zimbabwe must be such that journalists must be able to work as journalists and not as party functionaries. So those are some of the issues that even when you go and speak to development partners, we say that those are some of that is the roadmap that we want. Those are some of the issues that we are raising, that look, we need a free media. The Herald must be able to give everyone equal coverage. ZBC must be able to give everyone equal coverage. I think those are some of the issues that that I want to flag for now. And then, because this is a dialogue, I would like for us to be able to interact. You ask questions and I answer. I ask questions and you answer.
As the opposition, the MDC is being blamed for calling for the United States to keep the situation or the relationship that it has with Zimbabwe as is. Can you just unpack that and just try and address, because it's flying in the social media. The next thing we would want to know is the police and the soldiers. How best is that situation going to be handled?
The president is vested or is mandated by the constitution to deploy soldiers. Why then did Mugabe not go for punitive measures against Chiwenga if he had all the mandate from the constitution to deploy the soldiers?
The issue of, because I think people are basically talking about the visit to the United States by MDC Vice President Honorable Chamisa and Mr. Tendai Biti. I have watched a video, and you know, pictures don't lie. I've watched a video of the presentation by Mr. Tendai Biti and the presentation by Honorable Chamisa. And unless someone brings information which is contrary to what I have, I did not see in that video where they were calling upon punitive measures against Zimbabwe. And actually, in a video, a camera in an interview of which I have here, and Honorable Chamisa actually says, "We've come here to tell the Americans that we love our country and Zimbabwe must move forward." That's how he introduces it, that Zimbabwe must move forward. But Zimbabwe must move forward, yes it must. But for Zimbabwe to be able to move forward, Zimbabwe can only be made legitimate by a credible election. And there are things that we must be able to do for us to get to a credible election, to a free, fair, and credible election. I don't think there's anyone in Zimbabwe who does not want a free, fair, and credible election. Even the sitting president. The sitting president is one person who should cry and kick for a free and fair election so that he becomes legitimate. But if a sitting president does not want a free and fair election, what does he want? The ruling party is one which actually should be crying for a free and fair election more than the opposition. Because they want to be able to get into an election, win it freely, fairly, and be able to say, look, we got the mandate of the people to govern. So, in response to your question, I did not see in that video where, especially, both their meetings were public. Those were a matter of public information, and the deliberations in those meetings were made available. Unless there were other meetings that are known to people out there that we don't know, that they spoke about some of these things that are flying around on social media, I will stick to my guns and say, from what I know, from the statements that were released, from the communique that was released, there is no way in that communique where Honorable Chamisa and Honorable Biti called for sanctions on Zimbabwe. I did not see it, unless there was another meeting that they held, which I'm not privy to. But according to information that we have, the videos of that meeting, that is the response I can give. And you asked me about the relationship between the police and the soldiers, and I have a very interesting write-up here. He says, there is a reason you separate military and the police. One fights the enemies of the state, the other saves and protects the people. When the military becomes both, then the enemies of the state tend to become the people. So it's very clear that a country cannot function without a police service. A country cannot, the military cannot take the role of the police. Because the military does not have arresting powers. If a soldier is deployed to man a roadblock and he sees you driving with alcohol above the limit that is permissible by law, a soldier cannot arrest you because he doesn't have arresting powers. And when a soldier arrests you, where does he take you? Because the police officer arrests you, takes you to a police station where he records the statement. If he must detain you, he detains you, and within the period that is required, he brings you before a court of law. You are tried, and if you are convicted, you go and serve. If you are not convicted, you are released. And the Constitution is very clear. When you are arrested, the police service, the police officer must be able to make available a phone so that you get in touch with either your family or at least I think it's 2 or 3 people that you want to get with, at the expense of the police service. They will arrest you and tell you the reasons why you are arrested, and take you to a police station and give you access to a lawyer or a relative, whichever you prefer. And if they decide that you're going to go to police to their cells, you go to their cells, and within a specified time, you must be brought before a competent court, and that court must try you after the police has compiled a docket. We don't know, the army does not compile dockets, so the army cannot be deployed. We cannot continue to deploy the army and then sit here and assume everything is fine in Zimbabwe. As long as the army is deployed and the police is demobilized, then there's something wrong in this country, in Zimbabwe. And that must be said loud and clear. If the army remains deployed and the police force is demobilized, it means there's something fundamentally wrong with the way that country is operating. And someone must explain why the situation is like that. I think that is the answer that I can give. Electoral reforms. No country can endure without going through a free and fair election. Look, Zimbabwe, I was writing in, and I've written in numerous articles, and I've said, I don't know somebody who told us that having an election is a mark of democracy. You can have all the elections that you want, which are not democratic. You can have all the elections that you want. You can have 3 elections a year to choose a president, but the president might be chosen in a manner that's not democratic. We need a free, fair, and credible election. An election which is monitored by other members of the international family. And they must be able to come and say, look, this election is free and fair. People must be able to come a month before the election. They must be able to monitor the election, and they must be able to leave a month after the election. And there must be a mechanism for the smooth transfer of power in the event that the incumbent has lost to somebody who was contesting him. And if there's not that mechanism of free transfer of power, we'll still go back to the situation of 2008. We know what happened in 2008. We know Robert Mugabe himself, by his own admission, Morgan Tsvangirai won that election by 73%, although some say 79%, 75%, some say 69, some say 73, some say 75. But that is neither here nor there. But the fact of the matter is that somebody who was not the incumbent won that election, and yet power was not transferred smoothly to that person. So there's a problem. So what it means is that you can have all the elections that you want in Zimbabwe. For as long as there is no mechanism for the smooth transfer of power, then there's a problem. And then let me then also talk about military intervention. The military in Zimbabwe has always intervened in political processes. In 2002, we remember so vividly when the commander of the army then, Shinavashe, went on television, and just as voting was going on, and he said, I don't know what motivated him to say that, but look, from a citizen's point of view, as a citizen, when you see someone saying that, you must be able to say, look, those utterances have been motivated by something. And for me, those utterances were motivated by the likely outcome of that election. And I think the likely outcome of that election was that the incumbent was going to lose that election. So there was need for that preemptive statement to say, look, the presidency is a straitjacket, only a person with liberation war credentials is able to become president. So that was military intervention. Because here is a commander of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, together with some generals, who went on national radio and made that pronouncement. What they were essentially saying was that the process that we've gone through, that process of election, is useless. It was just a ritual. You can choose to have another process like that next week and it won't count for anything. That was the first time that we had, that was when we had the military intervention, which was so obvious, which could be seen. And the second time that we had military intervention was in 2008. We all know what happened in 2008. Somebody who contested Robert Mugabe clearly won an election by a wide majority. Let's put it conservatively, 69%. Because for you to be able to win an election, you need the 50% plus just one vote. So if you win by 69%, you have won an election. We know those results were not published for as long as we can all remember, I think for the next 6 weeks. And then we got into a runoff. And Morgan Tsvangirai decided to withdraw from the runoff, citing what he cited. And that runoff, it was a one-man race, which obviously, if you are running alone, you must be stupid to lose that race. I've not seen a person who walks on his own and is number two. If you walk on your own, obviously, you become number one. That's a given. And Robert Mugabe ran a one-man race, and he declared himself winner. I don't even know why he bothered to declare himself a winner, because he was alone. He was going to win it anyway. Now, the results of that runoff were announced within 12 hours of casting of the ballot, and yet just 2 months earlier, results were withheld for more than 6 weeks. The army cannot campaign for any political party if we're going to follow the Constitution, unless we amend the Constitution and say the army is able to campaign for the incumbent. Only then can it become legal. The Constitution is very clear. The army cannot campaign for any political party. Even the chiefs. The Constitution is very clear on the role of the chiefs. The chiefs must be apolitical. And it's constitutional. It is in the Constitution. So a chief cannot come to an MDC rally and say and chant a rally that is in favor of the MDC leader Morgan Tsvangirai. He's not allowed to do that by the Constitution. By the same token, he cannot go to his ZANU-PF rally and say Pamberina so and so. He's not allowed to do that because the Constitution is very clear on the role of traditional leaders. So what that means is that traditional leaders are eating into their own goodwill and legacy. But somebody one day is going to stand up and say the institution of traditional leaders is not following the Constitution. So should the institution of the traditional leaders be respected if they are not respecting the Constitution? Because I think traditional leaders, wherever they come from, they must be the custodians of this Constitution. Okay. And then the other question is, someone is saying, look, the president has so much power. Why did he not arrest Chiwenga? That's a very interesting question. Because the president has so much power, he could have ordered either the military police or the ZRP to arrest whomsoever he wanted to arrest. But I think the way the events unfolded, it was such that, especially those of us who were in Harare who saw the events unfolding, it was such that it was very difficult to deploy the police to arrest the commander of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, looking at what was happening. And I think we've heard about incidents where some members of the police force, actually we had information that all police stations were demobilized, and that a support unit was also demobilized as the military intervention was being put into motion. So I think that will probably answer why President Mugabe could not arrest the command of the defense forces.
As the parliamentarians, are you going to allow the president, if he's not legitimate, to address the parliament? How are you going to tackle that issue so that the diaspora vote issue sails through parliament and they come down to South Africa and other countries to register us to vote and to come back to us in the voting process?
What is the main purpose of that MDC alliance?
My personal opinion about the MDC alliance is that it was a very pragmatic move by the leader of the MDC to bring everyone together.
Yes.
Why do you want to leave somebody out? Who says the MDC has all the answers? The MDC does not have all the answers. The reason we are fighting with ZANU-PF is because ZANU-PF has this policy of exclusion. Let's involve everybody. If I'll tell you how the MDC was formed. Morgan Tsvangirai and Gibson Sibanda went to see President Mugabe to say, President Mugabe, we have these concerns as leaders of workers. We have these concerns that we think you must address. Please listen to us. And Mugabe said, look, you guys, I'm sick and tired of you. Why don't you go and form your own party? And then he went and reformed his own party. When you stop listening to other people, that is when you start to have problems. Mugabe only started having problems when he stopped listening to other people. Had Mugabe listened to Gibson Sibanda on that fateful day, MDC would not have been formed. Why should Morgan Tsvangirai behave as if he owns Zimbabwe? Morgan Tsvangirai is simply saying, I want everybody to come, let's share ideas, and we have one common enemy in that country. The common enemy in that country is the system of ZANU-PF. So what MDC did was pragmatic, very forward-looking, because in any case, imagine if the MDC had said, okay, we don't want to cooperate with any other political party, we're going to go it alone. You are the very same people that would come here and say, why are you wanting to oppose ZANU-PF on your own? You guys are power hungry because you want to get into government. Moita na president, ma vice president, ma ministers mega. But we are saying, what Morgan Tsvangirai is saying is that hakuna munasna role to play. Asunya arwa. Ngari vurwe with these 10 supporters. We need those 10 votes. The reason why we are saying the people in the diaspora must register to vote is because we need those votes in the diaspora. If today I'm told to register just you 10 people to vote, trust me, I will drive from Harare to Cape Town to register just you 10 people so that you go back home and vote. I'm not going to sit there and say, everyone matters in that country. Ngari Vurwe is a Zimbabwean, is a stakeholder, is a stockholder in that country. That is why Morgan Tsvangirai invited him to sit on the table. And I think that is one of the most pragmatic things, most pragmatic decision that Morgan Tsvangirai took ever since the formation of the MDC. People must come together and fight a common enemy. And I'm glad that people have come together and they're now fighting a common enemy. Because you don't want to spend time, and you don't want to spend time and Muchitu, we are trying to fight ZANU-PF and they're trying to fight off Ngarivunwe, and they're trying to fight off Watchman Ngube. And when you know Watchman Ngube, his bigger enemy is Robert Mugabe, and fighting Morgan Tsvangirai is a sideshow. You don't want sideshows. You want to focus on the main problem and deal with the main problem. You understand? So it's not about power. Actually, bringing in other political parties to the fore, MDC was diluting its own power. If MDC did not want to dilute its own power, they would have said, "Look, is this want to stand on our own." So that is my answer on that one. And then you talk about development in my constituency, in the areas of sewage. The biggest problem that is in Mavukta Fara, I grew up there and I have a house there, I live there, is that there's no water. The biggest problem in Mavukta Fara is the problem of water. The problem of water is not a problem that can be fixed by a member of parliament. The problem of water is a national government problem. Because in this, the constitution is very clear. It says government must make water available, portable drinking water. It means the people in Mavuku Tafara must be able to get their water through the tape, not from boreholes. I have sunk boreholes in Mavuku Tafara, but if you ask me, one thing that I hate the most in an urban setting is a borehole. In the Mavuku, and I've said this in Parliament, you will see board, caution, bore water, don't drink. Bore water was only for watering, and we were not even allowed to wash cars with bore water. So bore water, but today bore has become a primary source of drinking water. Actually, bore is primary and seat of Arai is secondary. Seat of Arai, I don't even use it to cook. Seat of Arai, I don't even use it to cook. So if an MP, and I've said this repeatedly in Parliament, if an MP is going to come to a constituency and tell people that I'm going to do development projects for you, that MP is a liar. It's the government which develops in Grikini, is the responsibility of the seat of Harare to give water to the people of Mavuku. As a parliamentarian, I have 3 roles. My first role is representing the people of Mavuku Tafara in Parliament. What it means is that people tell me, like, so if you stayed in Mavuku Tafara, I will then take it and raise it in Parliament. That's the representative role. Number 2 is to make laws. To say, this government is illegitimate. How do we get rid of it? What should we do? What do we do in the Constitution? Like what I was doing to impeach Mugabe. Making laws and applying those laws. That is my role number 2. My role number 3 is oversight of government. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, I'm going to be debating the budget. And when I debate the budget, then talk about Auditor General's report. And say, according to this budget, there are these issues that you must deal with. Those are the 3 roles of an MP. Ukona MP wa ndawugadzira vanhu road, you are missing it. Arisi basa MP rogadzira vanhu road. Road is nogadzirwa nehurumende. That is why in South Africa, imagine if you have a scenario like in South Africa where every MP is a proportional representation. Julius Malema does not have a constituency. His PR is proportional representation. So which area is he going to say ndakwenda ku social nguve? Which MP is going in Parliament is going to, I'm going to go to social nguve and make water available? It's not their job. Their job is to go to Parliament and say, government and the municipality of Joburg, make water available to social nguve, because the Constitution is saying you must make that water available. Yes. And when I go to and talk about the things that are needed in Tafara and Mavugo, I will not talk about things that are outside the Constitution. This is my Bible. I'll simply go and say, okay, vanekula faji, like you're talking about faji, vanekula faji, vanemutafara mavuku, varukiswa dust ni lafaji. What does the Constitution say? The Constitution says this about it. Don't lafaji. You must do something about dust lafaji. But let me tell you, Lafarge has made $1 million available to 3 constituencies. And incidentally, Mavuku Tafara is the only constituency in the whole country which is urban, which is a community ownership trust. $333,000 has been made available to Mavuku Tafara. And one thing that I would want to do is to make sure that because you are right, there are times when it's covered in dust. What is the Ministry of Health saying to the smoke room of Lafarge? And I was saying Lafarge must make health insurance available to the people that are affected when smoke. Lafarge should make a doctor available and test on TB. Lafarge should make a TB treatment available for free in Tafara and Mavugo, because it is their dust which affects the people in Mavugo Tafara. Yeah. And also, Lafarge should make people's lives very comfortable in Mavugo Tafara. Especially when those houses that are in Ward 19 in Tafara Mavugo. Marozavo, they must be tip-top. And Marozao, not only Marozao must be tip-top, they must be given medicines regular. Like in other jurisdictions, you dev each one a pint mkaka to wash out the dust. You know, they must be given say special lotions. You could dusty this is the kind of lotion that you must use. In other jurisdictions, they will do that. In other countries, they will do that. So that would be my response. Development, but actually, by the way, City of Harare have done a good job you can actually walk the whole suburb. But the reason there is that problem in Mavuku, it's not a problem which is peculiar in Mavuku Tafara alone. It's a problem that is there throughout the whole country because this government does not plan. Government is, if you look at the development from Cape Town, government plans. That's why government in South African plan out. Apachenda Zimba, apachenda a middle class, apachenda crash, apachenda park, apachenda chikoro. Government in Zimbabwe it is Royal Robert Mugabe. Because Robert Mugabe's government was based on three things: patronage, impunity, and entitlement. Yekungoti unongofamba ungosvika pa empty space ungoti papangu wesa flag yakanzi Dr. Mai Mugabe housing cooperative mangwana wakutokaunda ama footsteps ukaunda waku 10 ukaunda waku 10 uti apa Chimanga ukaunda apa 15 afindura apa ndepa Maridadi apa ndepa William Mapfumo modaro. A country cannot endure when it does that. But let me tell you, the electricity infrastructure irimu Harare yakasiwa na Ian Smith yakasiwa na 1977. And Mugabe has not put a single paw to increase the electricity infrastructure. Saka Zimbabwe zirikuwa kwa mavuku zeze. You do not Harare is nation in a 3 million eligible voters. 3 million eligible voters. I'm talking of voters alone. People that can vote that are above the age of 18. People that are citizens. People that are eligible to vote. What it means is that people, all those that are below the age of 18, we are not counting them in this 18 million. Which means Harare probably carries a population of 6.5 million. When that infrastructure Harare, it was meant to carry maybe 450,000 people. Now it's carrying 7 million people. What do you expect? Tikatura 323 Mazda 323 Panzapa in a carrying capacity of 3 people at the back, 2 in front, including the driver. Mugasaman 10 pam soro man form Putino Fambe. You can start it your family up get up, Yato Poncha Mafir, Mapisa clash. Those are it on Mugabe. Mugabe, I told a buzz no pin on 75, we saw on 600. Buzz also a clash. Can a buzz also a clash? Van was not a clash. Can a driver buzz? I think the sound from clash member, you know what he will do? I have a volume radio. Kutastands when you see red boom. But what it means is that one day that bus will come to a point where it will stop and it will die. And you can't repair it. So whoever comes to Zimbabwe first, the first thing they must do is go back to the drawing board and start planning. Let me just give you a typical example. If you go to Mbare, pa flyover pa Mbare Pape, that bypass where there's a flyover where you cannot you don't give anyone where Panama robots is just, that was commissioned in 1967. That thing was commissioned in 1967. And I had an opportunity here in South Africa, in Cape Town, when I was in 2007, to sit down and talk to Ian Smith. And Ian Smith tells me, Yamunoona Harare Road, Harare Drive. Harare Drive was deliberate. It was meant that Harare Drive was going to carry traffic like, Vakum Fakose, they do not have to go through Harare. Saka that bypass yangeke swaya Harare muno to any plan I think 10 similar bypasses. Imwenenda kumavuku, imwenenda kumfakose, imwenenda kungrikini kwa and so on. Because there was planning. But which road has Mugabe constructed ever since 1980? In 1980, Paranyatwa had 2,400 functioning toilets. Today there are less than 500 that are functioning. Because every ward yangene ma toilets hayo. 2,400 functioning toilets. Today there is none. So what we are suffering from Zimbabwe is lack of planning ya Mugabe, because Mugabe was never a leader. Mugabe was never a leader. He was a ruler. And rulers are interested in one thing, self-preservation. That is why you have so many of you here in South Africa. In 1980, the Zimbabwean dollar, the Rhodesian dollar, Rakasiwana Smith, was 1-to-1 with the British pound. And the British pound is the strongest currency in the world. And do you know that our highest denomination in 1980 was actually the smallest in the world? Zimbabwe's highest denomination was a $10 note. Costs not $20 in Zimbabwe. It was a $10 note. When a country its highest denomination is a $10 note, that economy is as powerful as anything. Even America already anga only $50. Britain actually anga only £20. But Rhodesia had $10 as its highest denomination. That must tell you a story. And yet in 2002, where it is our highest denomination, Marianga and Mazero is 28. You can't even explain it. Quadruple billion, you can't even explain it. So the problem that we have in Zimbabwe, that is why people were so happy with Mugabe had gone. You know, when you are driving a car, you are driving a vehicle, and you are facing oncoming traffic. And then when oncoming traffic encroaches into your lane, your reflex action is to avoid him. You could be avoiding a car, you're driving a Ford Ranger or a Land Rover Discovery, and you're avoiding a Mazda 323 coming. This is suppose you're trying to avoid a head-on. But in avoiding that, you go into a cliff where you are certainly going to die. You plunge into a cliff that is 3 kilometers down, but you're just trying to avoid a Mazda 323. Because natural reflex is that you must try to avoid immediate danger. You know, so when we celebrated the going of Mugabe, we were trying to avoid immediate danger. And we're saying because he is the common enemy of everybody. Mugabe was even an enemy of himself, so he should have celebrated. Yeah, because they'd become even a liability to himself. You see, Saka, people then now want to blame the opposition. Why did we march? We marched because we were expressing happiness with Mugabe is no longer there. That's why I marched. I did not march because I was supporting the military. I did not march because I was supporting Mnangagwa. I did not march because I was supporting myself. I marched because I was with my wife, Rigidi. How good does it feel that you can march and demonstrate in Harare without anyone trying to beat you up? Because Takaro Wachi demonstrates. Isus have been detained for demonstrating. Saka, now this issue of the legitimacy is the issue that you want to deal with. Now coming to your question, the issue of legitimacy is the issue that you want to deal with, getting into a free, fair and credible election. We deal with that issue of legitimacy because I know ZANU-PF is not capable of winning a free and fair election. It's not. ZANU-PF cannot win a free and fair election because if they were capable of winning a free and fair election, they would have been the first people to say, we want a free, fair and credible elections, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to invite the EU and the United Nations to monitor our elections 1 month before the elections, and this is the mechanism of transfer of power. If somebody who is not the incumbent wins, this is how you transfer power. But because they know they cannot win a free and fair election, that is why they are prevaricating on the issue of electoral reforms. But trust me, by hook or by crook, as a member of parliament, I will fight with every fiber of flesh in my body and with every drop of blood in my body to ensure that the election is a free, fair, and credible. I will fight at the risk of losing my own life. So that will answer question. That then answers the question of legitimacy. Now, the diaspora vote. That is a matter that everyone in Zimbabwe, especially who is in the opposition, is seized with. The reason why the status quo would not want people in the diaspora to vote is one. It's because they know they cause the people in the diaspora to leave home and go and live in the diaspora. And no one wants to live away from home. Because families have been broken and so many other nasty things have happened because of people coming to live in the diaspora, leaving their homes. So they know that people in the diaspora will punish them for breaking their families. That is why they will not want people in the diaspora to vote. But believe me, this constitution does not preclude people in the diaspora from voting. And people in the diaspora, we're going to do everything within our power to ensure that people in the diaspora vote. Because if they want your money, and the diaspora is remitting more than $1 billion back into Zimbabwe, do you know that? If everyone in the diaspora today were to stop remitting money into that economy will grind to a halt. The 200 rand that you sent at the end of the month, the 500 rands that he sends back home, the 400 rands that you send back home, the $10 that comes from England, the $50 that comes from the United States, if you put it together, that is the money which is helping to sustain the economy of Zimbabwe. The economy of Zimbabwe is a $4 billion economy, and about $1 billion of that comes from diaspora remittances. The elections in 2018 is going to deal with the issue of Mnangagwa as president of the country. Let's have a free, fair, and credible election and deal with those issues. If we believe it is illegitimate, is not legitimate, we'll be able to deal with him at the ballot. A credible election is an election that would go. It could be free, fair, but you're not credible. So if it is free, but it has been rigged, it means it's not fair and credible. So it means it will be contested on the basis that the election has been rigged. So free, fair, and credible election takes care of everything, including my issues, rigging here. And then the issue of diaspora, as I said, if the government wants people in the diaspora to vote, the government will put in place mechanisms to allow people in the diaspora to vote. That can be done. I mean, you gave me an example of my passport and my documents and collecting money from people. I think they could do the same thing and just register people to vote, because all they will say is that when we have my documents and you register to vote, and those that do not have documents can then have documents processed for them there and then, including even my passports, because if you are living outside the country, you need a passport to be able to travel. So they must be able to come and say for the next 6 weeks or 8 weeks, which is 2 months, we're giving free IDs like they did in Harare, they did in Zimbabwe. We're giving free IDs, we're giving free birth certificates. If you come during this period, the documents that we want you to bring are A, B, C. You bring those documents. They process your ID. They register you to vote. And if you don't have a passport, you're then able to get a passport. And then if you're going to pay a fee, and you're an eligible voter. And come voting time, the voting centers are made known, and then you vote, and your ballots are posted to Zimbabwe as postal vote. It's easy. Other countries do it. Mozambique does it in Harare. Mozambicans go and vote at Mozambique embassy. We see them voting at Mozambique embassy. So it's something that is doable. Let me go to the issue of the president, how the president can be succeeded. Succession in an event of death, resignation, or incapacity of president or vice president. If the president dies, resigns, or is removed from office, the first vice president assumes office as president until the expiry of the former term of office. So when he's removed from office, but it doesn't say how. See, the constitution is very easy to follow. It doesn't say a lot of things. Succession of a president is 2 lines. 1A, it's section 101, subsection 1, subsection A. If the president dies, resigns, or is removed from office, the first vice president assumes office as president until the expiry of the former president's term of office. And so it's only 2 lines. Now, in Zimbabwe, we didn't have first vice president and second vice president. The arrangement was that the last to act would assume the position of first vice president. So there used to be 2 vice presidents, Pelegezela Mpoko and Emerson Mnangagwa. So the last one of them to act would take over. But now it was going to be easier because there was only now just 1 vice president, Pelegezela Mpoko. So upon the removal of Robert Mugabe, Pelegezela Mpoko should have taken over and run the country until the expiry of the term of office of President Robert Mugabe, which is in 2018. So this is what the Constitution says, and I'll leave it at that.